Welcome to the Madison Lillard Podcast special emergency show because a monster NBA trade has happened and we must discuss it. Today, around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, from the one and only Adrian Wojnarowski, Damian Lillard has been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, the Milwaukee Bucks. News broke at 2:16 to be exact. 3-team deal with the Suns. Portland gets Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, an unprotected 2029 Milwaukee first, and unprotected Milwaukee swap rights in 28 and 30. Phoenix gets Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. And obviously, the Blazers get Dame. Alrighty. My head is still spinning from this trade. I absolutely love it for the Milwaukee Bucks. They listened to Giannis. They heard all the noise about how he wants out. This was a desperate move by a team that won the title not only that long ago. It was 2 years ago they won the title, and now all the Giannis wants out of Milwaukee stuff came out, and that put immense pressure on the Milwaukee Bucks to go out and get a big-time star to go with Giannis, and they indeed did that. So, for the time being, that takes Giannis off the next big name to be traded list. So, great job by the Bucks organization to respond very quickly. This was the most surprising trade in terms of a destination for a star player in a while. Paul George to the Clippers comes to mind, but nobody had Paul George available. And that's why that trade is probably the most shocking trade in NBA history to this date. Durant to the Suns was a popular rumor heading up to the trade deadline. I know some people were stunned by that, but I honestly wasn't. I was more surprised that Dame got traded to the Bucks than I was Kevin Durant to the Suns. Deron Williams to the to the Nets from the Jazz was an all-time shocker. That was like on the Paul George Clippers level of shock. Carmelo Anthony to the Oklahoma City Thunder was one that a lot of people didn't see coming. But it turns out the Knicks ended up winning that trade because they got the pick that turned into Mitchell Robinson in that trade. So they actually won that trade low-key. So there's a couple other shocking trade destinations for an available star that comes to mind, and this is one of them. So what a big win for the Milwaukee Bucks. Other big winners, the other two teams involved in the trade, I think this is a win for all three parties. I don't think it's a popular take, but I believe it's the case. Portland does very good getting a guy that is a change of scenery guy in DeAndre Ayton, a guy they can easily flip for more assets in Drew Holiday, and unprotected picks from the Bucks in 29 and it swaps in 28 and 30, and we don't even know if Giannis is going to be there in those years, and same for Dame. So I think those picks are monstrous for Portland, and now all of a sudden they have assets in the room to go get an available star to go with Scoot Henderson years down the road, like how Oklahoma City has to go with SGA, and in theory the Pelicans can do with Zion, and the Nets can do with Mikal Bridges, and all these other teams that have boatloads of draft picks to trade for big stars as well. So Portland is a winner, and Phoenix I think is a winner. They get some nice depth, much needed depth. Nurkic is a downgrade at center, but they can sacrifice it for the depth. Nasir Little, good bench piece. Grayson Allen, sharpshooter from 3. I like the idea of Grayson Allen on the Phoenix Suns. And then Keon Johnson is a solid player too. So Phoenix gets much needed depth out of this trade. And they get somebody that was perceived as a locker room cancer in DeAndre Ayton a little bit, and he clearly didn't get along with the everybody in Phoenix. Although Monty Williams was fired, he was the fall guy for why they collapsed in the playoffs against Denver. But DeAndre Ayton is also a fall guy too, and it turns out the mystery team in the East all along was the Bucks and not the Raptors. Once the Raptors were rumored to be in the mix, we thought that was the mystery team, but the real mystery team was the Bucks, and nobody, absolutely nobody, saw this coming. I was convinced that mystery team was Philly, and then when the Raptors report came out, I was like, oh, it's the Raptors, and it makes a lot of sense for them to do it and to try to go for it again. But we'll get into why they didn't in a couple of minutes. But to me, Milwaukee's now the team to beat in the East, no doubt about it. You have Dame and Giannis. You're the team to beat, and Boston's right there. I think Philly's a mess with the Harden situation. I honestly thought that the Dame trade was going to involve Harden, and maybe Dame would go to that Team X, and then Harden would go to Portland in that Jrue Holiday scenario and get flipped for something else kind of thing. So, really fun trade. I like it for all parties involved. So the losers of the deal, the Miami Heat. Awful that they didn't trade for him. They literally put all their eggs in the Damian Lillard basket, and they failed miserably. This is a terrible look for Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and that entire organization. They lost so much depth because all they cared about was getting that big star, and they failed to land him. But there could be bigger fish to fry and better fish to fry than Damian Lillard. It's similar to the Knicks situation with Donovan Mitchell. But to be fair, the Knicks didn't sacrifice depth to go potentially try to get Donovan Mitchell like how Miami did. They're like, okay, we could get rid of some guys so we could, because we're confident we're getting Damian Lillard. We're going to get rid of Gabe Vincent. Okay, you can go to the Lakers because we're going to get Damian Lillard. You just can't freaking do that. Like, the Heat might be playing for the play-in tournament again for the second year in a row. Like, they have no depth. And their team's worse. So that team is sneaky in terms of a team that's going to underachieve next season. And I am probably going to be all over their under. So take a look out for that for the portfolio segment or when I do the NBA season preview podcast. I am definitely going to consider the Miami Heat under if it's at the right number. And they are monster losers in this Damian Lillard trade. The Toronto Raptors, to me, are not a loser. I just think that it was just pure speculation that they were the mystery team because they had a good young asset in Scotty Barnes that I think Portland wanted to get for Dame. And that would have been anything better than what Portland got. Although, like I said, I think they can flip Holiday. They can flip Ayton. And they have all those great draft picks from Milwaukee that are going to be good picks. So, that's that. And I think, like I said, the Raptors, I think, are being used a little bit. And Portland was trying to say, like, hey, we want Scotty Barnes. And they probably offered Dame to Toronto, but Toronto's like, hell no, we're not giving up Scotty Barnes. He's our future. So maybe Toronto is kind of like the Knicks with Donovan Mitchell, kind of did the right thing by not giving up young assets and OG Anunoby to go get Dame. So another loser, I think the Knicks have to be mentioned as a pseudo-loser only because it takes Giannis off the board for them for now. I mean, Embiid could be on the board for them to trade for. It's similar to Miami, but they're not as monster loser like Miami. I think the Knicks are a pseudo-loser because it takes Giannis off the table for the time being. And Jrue Holiday doesn't fit the Knicks. I mean, they have Jalen Brunson. They have a player similar to Jrue Holiday, kind of. in Brunson, who's just the leader on and off the court and does all the right things. So you can't really blame the Knicks for going out after Dame, only because he just doesn't fit with the Knicks, and Drew Holiday doesn't either. But they're a loser solely because of the Giannis piece of this. But Embiid's still on the board, and Luka's potentially still on the board too. Don't forget about Luka, because that thing can go south in Dallas too. And even Miami now. I think Jimmy Butler has to be mentioned as a star that could be available. I'm sorry, Miami could blow up because they didn't trade Damian Lillard and they're bad all of a sudden, and then Jimmy becomes on the market. So, and I think Jimmy makes the most sense for the Knicks personally. He's an upgrade over R.J. Barrett on the wing. And oh yeah, it's a Tom Thibodeau favorite, and it's the best player that Tom Thibodeau's ever developed, Jimmy Butler. And I'm a big Jimmy Butler fan too. And you've heard me praise Jimmy Butler time and time again on this podcast several different times. So that's another potential star that could be available. So Heat loser, Knicks kind of a loser. Brooklyn's a loser because I think they were in play for the trade, and that would have been a good fit with Mikal Bridges, and then the Nets would have had to give up some depth like Milwaukee did, but they're kind of a loser. Philly's a loser because that just puts more pressure and more talk for Embiid to potentially be moved with Giannis off the board. So, to me, Philly's a loser. The Celtics are a loser because they've been leapfrogged by the Bucks for me as the team to beat in the East. I think a loser in this low-key in terms of the West, with the Suns getting better with this trade. I think the Lakers and the Nuggets are not big losers, but now they have a competitor with them in the West. But to me, a loser in the West is the Minnesota Timberwolves, because I thought they were the sleeping giant for Dame, and I would have dealt Karl Anthony Towns to either Portland or a third team, and your foundation would have been Gobert, Dame, and Anthony Edwards, with Anthony Edwards being the guy, and Dame right there with him, and kind of similar to the Chris Paul trade to Phoenix with Devin Booker as like a reminiscence. So that would have been a great destination for Dame. I would have loved for him to end up on Minnesota. So winners and losers. Other ramifications to this deal. Drew Holiday's obviously going to be on another team in all likelihood in February, because I don't think he is a fit with Scoot Henderson. I just think that's weird. So teams in play for him are the other teams that were in play for Dame. I think Minnesota would be interesting for Drew. I think Miami would be interesting for Drew. But I think it'll take a lot to get Drew, and I think that Drew could go for a similar package like Milwaukee had to give up for him several years ago when they acquired him to go with Giannis. So, like I said, I don't know who will trade for Drew. I don't know if that's a Raptors kind of move. I think that Minnesota, Miami, maybe the Lakers to go for a big three again with Drew, AD, and LeBron. Could he be a Clipper to put him with Kawhi and Paul George? Some other teams that come to mind for Drew is San Antonio. You could put him with Wembanyama, and then you can get some young assets and picks back from San Antonio to Portland. New Orleans, maybe reuniting with New Orleans for Drew, and you can put him with Zion and B.I., assuming you don't have to give up B.I. in the deal. Oh, that'd be really weird if they traded Drew Holiday to New Orleans for C.J. McCollum, and then C.J. McCollum and Drew Holiday be back on their old teams. That'd be so funny. But yeah, there's a lot on the table now with this trade. I had to do an emergency podcast on this monstrous trade in the NBA that nobody saw coming. So other players that I think are next on the chopping block. Obviously, Joel has to be mentioned. I think Giannis is off with this trade. Jimmy Butler, now that they didn't get Dame, I think Jimmy has to be mentioned. I think that Luka has to be mentioned, because if the Kyrie thing falls apart again, then Luka might ask out of Dallas. Obviously, Harden's still available. We know that. He wants to go to the Clippers. Or maybe that's where the Heat pivot, ironically enough. Imagine it, Harden on Miami. That right there would be the 2017 All-Star team with Bam, Harden, and Jimmy. Maybe more like 2020, 2021 All-Star team, whatever. But it'd be weird if Philly traded Harden to Miami because that's where they traded Jimmy. So we'll see where Harden ends up. But yeah, I can't think of other guys that can end up being available. I got to do a trade value list sometime soon. But the only reason why Dame going to the Bucks is bad for the league in a way is because it takes away the Giannis speculation. I think speculating about Giannis is something that would have been good for the podcast for content. But now we can shift our content from Giannis potentially to Jimmy Butler now that Miami didn't land Dame. And Drew Holiday's next team is going to be interesting. I do not think he'll play the full season in Portland. That'd just be awkward with the fit with Scoot. So that is obviously going to be interesting. I saw Kevin O'Connor tweet out Orlando as a team that should go after Drew, which would be really, really fun to have Drew on that young Orlando team as a young leader type of guy. And maybe Mo Wagner can go to Portland in that deal. And obviously they don't have to get rid of Franz, but maybe Mo Wagner could be a centerpiece in a Drew Holiday trade with a pick or two if you're Orlando. Miami, similar package. But the issue is that Portland doesn't want Tyler Herro. Tyler Herro, you would think, would go to a third team. Ironically, Tyler Herro would fit really well in Milwaukee. As like a sixth man, kind of like how he was with Miami. So, it's going to be interesting to see what's next. And obviously, this was a bombshell. We knew this trade was happening sooner rather than later, but we thought it was going to be the Raptors or Miami and not the Milwaukee Bucks. So there you have it for this special edition emergency show, and I'll be back for the regular podcast tomorrow. Have a great evening, everyone.